Welcome to Enots Engineering, I'm Alan. In today's video we'll be turning a couple of Morse tapers and making some attachments. This one's for a centre drill and this one is for a small revolving centre. Both are turned between centres. We used two methods. One was the compound slide set at the angle to turn the taper, and the other was using the tailstock offset to set the angle to turn the taper. So let's see how we got on. I've just set this bar in a 4-jaw chuck and I've clucked it up. It's within a couple of thou. It's sticking out of the chuck about 8 inches, so I've just clocked it up here. This bit of weld here is from the steel stock holder where they welded two bars together when they were chopping them off at lengths, and this is the end of the bar. So what I want to do on this is just turn this lump off, face it up, centre it, and then turn it round and do the same on the other end. Turn it round in the 4-jaw chuck and do exactly the same on the other end. I'm just fitting this carrier onto the bar, and in where the chuck was I fitted a centre, and the driving dog, which will be this bolt. So this is driven round by the motor which drives the carrier, and on the other end it's got a revolving centre. There are two ways I can do this taper. One is to alter the compound slide so it's parallel with this by using a dial indicator. Then I know I've got the taper. Or the other way is offsetting the tailstock. So I've set the compound slide to mimic that angle. So as I'm running up that collet, it's just less than a thou. From 0 to 10 is 1 thou. I will now put the part back in the lathe and replace the dial indicator with a cutting tool. Machine it so it's true for that length before I start cutting the taper. This is at about 825 diameter. Number 2 Morse taper. This one is 732.732. That's 0.7, 60 near enough, which is still bigger than I need, but at least now this is parallel. I've turned it so that the tool is at the end of the travel for the compound slide. Set it to the end. just starting to enter number 2 collet. I'll have to change my method of doing this taper. The taper's right, the angle's right, but that is the furthest I can travel on the compound slide, which is not enough for a proper Morse taper, being that this was made on this lathe. It's not long enough because you have to have an injection pin put in the end then. This is a proper Morse taper collet. You can see the taper's to there, which would mean I've still got another ½ inch at least of taper to turn on there, which I can't do because my top slide is at the end of its movement there and at the end of its movement here. So the only way I can do this now is use this taper, because it's related to the length between centres, offset my tailstock so that this taper is parallel to the tool slide. That will give me 2 advantages. One, when I turn the bar around I can do the taper on the other end no problem. The second advantage is I can use my traverse instead of the compound slide handle, which will give me a better finish. So now what I will do is put the dial indicator back in, get the dial indicator running 0, 0 on this machined surface by offsetting the tailstock. On this lathe the 0 marks are on the back here of the tailstock, and this is one of the screws, and there's one on the opposite side, and it pulls the tailstock top towards you or away from you depending on which ones you tighten. What I've done now is I've offset the tailstock, and you can see I've put a dial indicator in and I'm just touching it onto the end there. The finish is a bit rough, but you can see when I come down this end it's still near the 0. Use that as my starting point. I've locked it up at that. I'll put some micrometer blue on there. So it's touching there, there. Probably wants to alter it a bit so that it's taking more off the top. It's not touching there, it's touching at the top, so it wants more off the top. So I'll just tighten the back of the tail, slacken it off at the front. It's touching. I see I've got a problem already. You can see there with that cut, the tool post has hit the revolving centre. This is one of the reasons I'm making this, to stop this problem. This revolving centre, the diameter is far too big, so it means you've always got to have your tool sticking out far more than I would like. I'll have to try and see if I can get Start again. You see it's just coming now. That's probably about the right length in the hole there. I think that just needs a polish. You can see on this end it goes through. That should eject okay. So what I'm going to do with that is polish it. I can't get that off once I've put it on there, so the taper can't be that far out. I've just finished the second end, so now I've got two Morse tapers, and what I've done is just put a slight diameter on the end there, so when this goes into the Morse taper it clears, doesn't lock up on the bottom, and when you eject it with it will eject on that diameter and not on the edge of the taper. I've done that on both ends. That one is now on the 0 mark. I'll just nip this up. All I've got here is a bar. I've faced it and centred on each end, then I've put it between centres and turned its diameter. It doesn't matter what the size is. What we're going to do is put the bar between centres, move the dial indicator down, put the dial indicator square and roughly on centre. I've got a flat end on this dial indicator. And you can see for the cutout, there we go. I'm bringing it in, just go around 3/4 of a turn to 0, remove it from the centres, move the dial indicator down to the other end, turn the bar around and put it back in centres, put it back on the bar in the same position, and it should read 0. So now if I adjust the tailstock till it comes to 0, too far, lock the other side, I've put a piece of sheet metal there just to protect the surface that I've turned. I'll saw that off the rest of the way. So next job is to drill two holes and tap to hold that in, and then that gives me a centre that the diameter is a lot smaller, so I can get my tool in closer and the tool post won't hit the outside. And this one, the other one I did, is a centre drill holder. Centre drill goes in, I'll just drill and tap the side for a grub screw. That's it for today. 2 finished parts. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you see you next time on Enots Engineering.